They moved Jiwoo to a different facility before sunrise. The building was underground, buried so deep that she lost count of the elevator levels. The new room was bigger than the last one, but felt more like a prison. Cameras watched from every corner. The walls were reinforced metal instead of plain white plastic. Scientists came every day. They took more blood samples, ran scanners over her body, and asked endless questions. Most of the scientists were alien species she had never seen before. A crystalline being named Talvir seemed to be in charge. His body looked like living glass that changed colors when he moved. "Tell me about your family," Talvir said during one session. His voice sounded like wind chimes. Jiwoo sat in a metal chair, electrodes attached to her temples. "Why does that matter?" "Everything matters now. Your genetics, your history, your environment. We need to understand why you carry this element and others don't. My mother works in agriculture on Seoul Orbital Station. My younger brother is still in school. My father died 5 years ago. How did he die?" The question hurt. It always hurt. His cargo ship's navigation system failed. He crashed into an asteroid field. They said it was just bad luck. Talvir made a note on his datapad. "What did your father transport?" "Supplies, equipment. Whatever companies needed moved between stations." "Why are you asking about him?" "We're exploring all possibilities." Talvir's colors shifted to something darker. "Your genetic markers are human, completely standard according to our database. Yet your blood produces an element that shouldn't exist. The contradiction troubles us." Jiwoo had heard this same statement a dozen times. She was normal but impossible at the same time. Another scientist entered, this one from a species called the Thalons. They were a hive mind race that shared one consciousness across many bodies. "The latest test results are ready," the Thalon said. Talvir studied a holographic display that appeared in the air. His colors flickered rapidly, which Jiwoo had learned meant he was shocked. "This cannot be accurate. Run it again. We've run it 4 times. The results are consistent. What is it?" Jiwoo asked. Talvir looked at her with something that might have been fear. "Your blood doesn't just produce this element. The element responds to your thoughts. When we placed it near different energy sources, it amplified some and destroyed others. When you were sleeping, it remained dormant. When you were stressed, it became more active. It's not just a substance. It's connected to you." Jiwoo remembered the sensations she had felt in the isolation room, the awareness of energy around her, the ability to sense things beyond normal human perception. "What does that mean?" "We don't know. But it means you're more dangerous than we initially thought." They increased security after that. More guards, thicker walls. Jiwoo wasn't allowed any visitors. She asked about Hana every day, but they never answered. The loneliness was worse than the tests. Captain Dae-hyun came to see her on the 7th day. The guards let him into her room but stayed close, weapons ready. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I'm a prisoner," Jiwoo said. "How do you think I'm holding up?" Dae-hyun nodded. "I'm working on getting you out of here. But it's complicated. The Coalition Council is debating your status. Some want to classify you as a strategic resource. Others want you transferred to maximum security. A few want you eliminated as a threat." "Eliminated?" Jiwoo's blood went cold. "They want to kill me for something I didn't choose. They're afraid. Fear makes people do stupid things." Dae-hyun moved closer and lowered his voice. "There's something they're not telling you. The blood tests weren't routine. They were searching for something specific. 20 years ago, they found an ancient artifact at the edge of known space. It had writing in a dead language. After decades of work, they translated one line. It said, 'Beware the inheritors of the primordial forge. Their blood carries the flame that built the stars.'" Jiwoo stared at him. "That's just a myth. Ancient civilizations loved dramatic warnings. Maybe. But they've been testing every species in the Coalition for 20 years, looking for anyone whose blood showed unusual properties. You're the first person to ever trigger a positive result. That's why they're terrified. What do they think I am? A descendant of whoever wrote that warning. A remnant of something older than the Coalition. Something powerful enough that it scares people who have ruled the galaxy for thousands of years." Before Jiwoo could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed. Dae-hyun's communication device crackled with urgent voices. "Security breach. Unauthorized access to Research Level 3. All personnel evacuate." Dae-hyun grabbed Jiwoo's arm. "We need to move now." They ran into the hallway. Guards were already shooting at something around the corner. Explosions shook the walls. Through the smoke, Jiwoo saw figures in black armor advancing toward them. They wore no identification markers. "Who are they?" Jiwoo shouted over the noise. "I don't know, but they're coming for you." A guard next to them fell, hit by enemy fire. His weapon clattered to the floor. Without thinking, Jiwoo picked it up. The moment her fingers touched the metal, she felt something change. The weapon's energy signature connected to her awareness. She could feel its power flow, its targeting system, every component inside it, and she knew instinctively how to make it better. Golden light spread from her hands across the weapon. The metal reshaped itself. The energy cell output doubled. When she pulled the trigger, the blast that emerged was twice as powerful as normal. Perfectly accurate without needing to aim. She fired 3 times. 3 attackers went down. Daehyun stared at her. "What did you just do?" "I don't know." Jiwoo looked at her hands. The golden light faded, but she could still feel the weapon responding to her will like an extension of her body. More attackers came. Jiwoo and the remaining guards fought their way to an emergency elevator. Daehyun pushed her inside and pressed the button for the surface level. "Those people weren't coalition forces," Daehyun said as the elevator rose. "They were too organized. Someone sent them specifically to extract you." "Extract me? You mean kidnap me?" "Probably. You're valuable to the wrong people now, and I don't just mean scientists." The elevator opened onto a landing pad where a small ship waited. Talvir stood by the entrance, his crystalline body dim with worry. "Get her off-world," Talvir said to Daehyun. "The council has issued an order. Jiwoo is to be transferred to a military research station in deep space. They're calling it protective custody, but we both know what it really is. Take her somewhere safe while I try to buy time." "Why are you helping me?" Jiwoo asked. Talvir's colors swirled with something that looked like sadness. "Because I've spent my life studying the old civilizations. I know what happens when power and fear mix. They won't help you understand what you are. They'll only try to use you or destroy you. Someone needs to give you a chance." Gunfire echoed from the elevator shaft. The attackers were getting closer. "Go!" Talvir pushed them toward the ship. Jiwoo and Daehyun ran aboard. The ship lifted off just as the attackers reached the landing pad. Through the window, Jiwoo watched Talvir raise his arms. Light exploded from his crystalline body, creating a barrier that held the attackers back. Then the ship accelerated and the facility disappeared below them. Daehyun set the navigation system for deep space. "We're heading to a hidden station where other humans gather. People who don't trust the coalition. They'll help us figure out what to do next." Jiwoo touched the window, looking back at the planet where she had been a prisoner. Her normal life was completely gone now. She was running from the coalition, from mysterious attackers, from everyone who wanted to control the power in her blood. And somewhere, in the deepest parts of her genetic memory, something ancient was beginning to wake up. Jiwoo sat in the medical bay with 300 other cadets waiting for her turn. The room smelled like metal and something chemical that made her nose itch. Around her, aliens of every shape and size talked quietly while nurses moved between the rows of seats. Some cadets had scales, others had extra arms, and a few glowed faintly in the dim light. She looked down at her hands. Plain human hands. Nothing special about them at all. The Galactic Military Academy accepted 10,000 cadets every year from across the known galaxy. Only 200 of those cadets were human. Earth had joined the Galactic Coalition 200 years ago, but most alien species still saw humans as the new kids who didn't belong. Weak, slow, unremarkable. Jiwoo wanted to prove them wrong. "Cadet Jiwoo," a nurse called out. The nurse had blue skin and 4 eyes, 2 on each side of her head. Jiwoo stood up and walked to the testing station. Her roommate Hana gave her a thumbs up from across the room. Hana was the only other human in their training unit, and the only real friend Jiwoo had made since arriving at the academy 6 months ago. "This is routine," the nurse said, preparing a needle. "We test all cadets for genetic compatibility with the new enhancement serums. Hold out your arm, please." Jiwoo rolled up her sleeve and extended her arm. The needle pinched her skin and she watched her blood flow into a small glass vial. Dark red, completely normal. The nurse labeled the vial with a number and placed it into a machine that looked like a metal box with lights on top. "You can go," the nurse said. "Next cadet." Jiwoo started to stand, but then something happened. The machine made a noise like breaking glass. Sparks shot from the sides. The nurse jumped back with a surprised chirp. Other nurses rushed over, talking quickly in languages Jiwoo didn't understand. Stay there, one of them ordered. Jiwoo froze in her seat. Through the clear side of the machine, she could see her blood sample. It wasn't red anymore. The liquid had turned gold, bright and shimmering like melted sunshine. The golden substance seemed to move on its own, spreading across the inside of the machine. Where it touched damaged parts, they started working again. The broken lights flickered back to life. More medical staff arrived. Then instructors. Within 5 minutes, 20 people surrounded Jiwoo's station, all staring at the golden substance in the machine. An instructor with gray skin and no nose leaned close to examine the sample. "Run it through the database," he said. Full spectrum analysis. They worked quickly, connecting cables and pressing buttons. Jiwoo sat very still, her heart beating fast. Hana pushed through the crowd and grabbed her hand. "What's happening?" Hana whispered. "I don't know," Jiwoo answered. A screen above the machine flickered to life. Lines of text scrolled past, too fast to read. Then everything stopped. The screen showed one message in bright red letters. Element, Unidentified classification, Earthborn Prime, no match in Galactic database. The room went completely silent. The gray instructor touched his communication device. "Get the director. Get security. Quarantine the station immediately." "Quarantine?" Jiwoo stood up quickly. "I'm not sick. I don't understand what's happening." "Nobody does," the instructor said. His voice was not unkind, but his eyes showed fear. "That's why we need to secure you. For everyone's safety." Security officers arrived wearing heavy armor. They formed a circle around Jiwoo. The director of medical sciences pushed through the crowd, her 6 legs clicking on the floor. She looked at the golden sample, then at Jiwoo, then back at the sample. "Seal the medical bay," the director ordered. "No one leaves until we understand what we're dealing with. Move the cadet to isolation room 7. "I didn't do anything wrong," Jiwoo said, her voice shaking. "We know," the director said, "but your blood just created something that shouldn't exist. Something that's not in the records of 50,000 known civilizations across 2 million years of galactic history. Until we know what that means, we cannot take chances." They escorted Jiwoo out of the medical bay. Hana tried to follow, but security stopped her. Jiwoo looked back and saw her friend arguing with the officers, but their voices faded as they led her deeper into the facility. The isolation room had white walls, a bed, and a bathroom. Nothing else. A window made of thick glass looked out into a hallway where guards stood watch. Jiwoo sat on the bed and tried to understand what had happened. Her blood had changed, but she felt normal. She wasn't glowing or growing extra arms or anything strange. She touched her arm where they had drawn blood. The skin was smooth, not even a mark from the needle. That was odd. Usually, needle marks stayed for at least a few hours. Jiwoo closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Something felt different. She could sense things she couldn't before. The walls around her weren't just walls anymore. She could feel the energy running through them, like the building itself was alive with electricity and data. She knew, without knowing how she knew, that the door lock was controlled by a panel 20 feet down the hallway. She could feel the emotional states of the guards outside, their nervousness like static in the air. This was impossible. Humans didn't have these abilities. Hours passed. No one came to explain anything. Food arrived through a slot in the wall. Jiwoo tried to sleep but couldn't. Every sound in the building felt loud. Every light felt too bright. Her senses were becoming something more than human. Finally, late at night, someone approached. Jiwoo sat up and saw a human man in a military uniform standing outside the glass. He was older, maybe 40, with scars on his face and gray in his hair. 3 stars marked his shoulder, the rank of captain, one of the highest positions any human had achieved in coalition forces. He pressed a button and spoke through the intercom. "Cadet Jiwoo, my name is Captain Dae-hyun. I'm here to make sure Earth doesn't lose you to those who would use you. We need to talk about what you are and what it means for humanity." Jiwoo walked to the glass. "What am I?" Captain Dae-hyun's expression was hard to read. "That's what everyone wants to know. But I can tell you this much. Your blood doesn't just carry something new. It carries something very, very old. And a lot of powerful people are going to want to control it. Starting tomorrow, your life as a normal cadet is over." "I'm sorry." He turned and walked away, leaving Jiwoo alone with questions that had no answers and abilities she didn't understand. She looked at her reflection in the glass. Same face, same eyes, but something fundamental had changed. She was no longer just human. She was something called Earthborn Prime. and the galaxy was afraid of what that meant. The hidden station was called Haven. It floated in an asteroid field far from any major trade routes, built inside a hollowed-out rock the size of a mountain. Dae-hyun said it was one of several secret bases run by humans who didn't trust the Coalition's intentions. Ji-woo met the station commander, a woman named Kyung-soon, who had served in Coalition forces for 20 years before deserting. Her right arm was mechanical, replaced after some battle she never talked about. "You've caused quite a storm," Kyung-soon said, pouring tea in her small office. "Every species in the Coalition is arguing about what to do with you. Some want you studied, some want you locked away, some want you dead. I'm just one person," Ji-woo said. "Why does everyone care so much?" Kyung-soon pulled up a holographic display. "Because of what your blood can do. We've been monitoring Coalition communications. They tried to replicate your blood sample. They exposed it to their most advanced weapon systems." "Want to know what happened?" Ji-woo nodded, afraid of the answer. "The weapons failed. All of them. Energy rifles melted. Antimatter cores destabilized. AI targeting systems corrupted. Your blood doesn't just create a new element. It rejects everything not made by or for humans. They're calling it the rejection protocol. That's impossible. How can blood reject technology? That's what everyone wants to know." Kyung-soon closed the display. "Captain Dae-hyun says you modified a weapon during the fight. Made it more powerful just by touching it. Is that true?" Ji-woo remembered the feeling of the weapon in her hands, how it had responded to her thoughts. "Yes, I didn't mean to. It just happened. That's what scares them. You have power you don't understand and can't control, which makes you unpredictable." Dae-hyun entered the office carrying a data drive. "I got those encrypted files you asked for. The ones about the artifact and the blood testing program." Kyung-soon inserted the drive into her computer. They spent the next hour reading through classified documents that made Ji-woo's head spin with their implications. The artifact found 20 years ago wasn't just ancient. It was older than any known civilization. The inscriptions weren't in one dead language but in hundreds, as if whoever made it wanted to be understood no matter who found it. Most of the warnings were still untranslated, but the one line they had deciphered was clear. "Beware the inheritors of the primordial forge. Their blood carries the flame that built the stars. They sleep now, hidden among the small and forgotten, but when they wake, the order of all things will change. The children will remember what the parents forgot, and those who rule will fear what they cannot control." Ji-woo read the words 3 times. "It talks about people sleeping, hidden. That sounds like it's talking about humans." "That's what the Coalition thinks," Dae-hyun said. "Earth was isolated for most of its history. No contact with other species until 200 years ago. Some Coalition scientists believe humans might be survivors of an older civilization that lost its technology somehow. That's crazy. Earth's history goes back thousands of years. We have records. We know where we came from, do we?" Kyung-soon asked. "How much of Earth's ancient past is really understood? There are structures under the oceans that don't match any known civilization, artifacts buried in ice that show technology we shouldn't have had. What if humanity forgot something? What if we were something more and lost it?" Ji-woo wanted to argue, but she couldn't. She was living proof that humans carried something unusual, something powerful enough to frighten species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. A young man knocked on the office door. He was human, maybe 25, with tired eyes and nervous energy. "Commander, we've decoded more of the encrypted files. You need to see this." They followed him to a computer lab where screens showed documents marked with the highest security classifications. The young man, whose name was Tae-min, pulled up a file that made everyone in the room go silent. It was a list of incidents. Ships that had failed mysteriously, stations that had experienced unexplained system errors, people who had died in accidents that looked suspicious. Next to each incident was a name and a location. Ji-woo saw one name that made her heart stop. "That's my father." "Your father was on this list?" Kyung-soon asked. "He died 5 years ago. Navigation failure. They said it was an accident." Ji-woo's hands shook as she pointed at the screen. "What is this list?" Tae-min pulled up another file. "These are people who were investigated by a secret coalition group called the Preservation Council. Every person on this list was human, and every person on this list died shortly after being investigated." "Why were they investigated?" Ji-woo asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "Because they found things, ancient artifacts, Unusual technology. Your father's cargo records show he transported items recovered from Earth's ocean floor 6 months before his death. Items that were confiscated by coalition authorities and never seen again. Items that might have revealed the truth about what humans really are. The anger that filled Jiwoo was hotter than anything she had felt before. Her father hadn't died in an accident. He had been murdered, killed to keep humanity ignorant about its own past. She felt the golden element in her blood respond to her rage, energy building inside her like a storm ready to break. "Easy," Daehyun said, putting a hand on her shoulder. "I know what you're feeling. But we need you in control." Jiwoo took deep breaths, forcing the energy back down. "Who are these Preservation Council people?" "They're a secret organization inside the coalition government," Kyung-soon explained. "Their goal is to maintain the current power structure. They see humanity as a threat to that structure. If humans are really descendants of an ancient civilization, it changes everything about the galactic order. They'll do anything to prevent that truth from coming out." "We need to expose them," Jiwoo said. "We need to survive first," Kyung-soon replied. "The Preservation Council has agents everywhere. They probably already know you're here." As if summoning them with her words, alarms started blaring throughout the station. Taemin checked his monitors and his face went pale. "We have incoming ships." "Lots of them. Coalition military markings. They found us," Daehyun said. "We need to evacuate." "There's no time," Kyung-soon said. "They'll blast us before we can launch enough ships. Everyone to the defense stations. We fight." Haven's population was only 300 humans. The coalition force approaching had 10 warships. Jiwoo felt despair settle in her chest. They couldn't win this. But then something unexpected happened. Other ships appeared on the monitors, moving to intercept the coalition fleet. Ships from alien species Jiwoo didn't recognize. 20 vessels, then 30, then 50. "Who are they?" Kyung-soon asked. A communication came through. The face that appeared on screen was alien, with blue skin and golden eyes. "Haven Station, this is the vessel Eternal Watch. We are here to protect the Inheritor. The time of hiding is over. The Architect's children must be allowed to wake." "Architects?" Jiwoo whispered. The alien on screen looked directly at her. "You carry the blood of those who built our worlds and lifted us from darkness. We have waited 2 million years for your return. We will not let the Preservation Council silence you." The battle that followed was brief but violent. The alien ships defending Haven were older than anything in the Coalition fleet, but their technology was superior. They moved faster, their weapons hit harder, and they fought with a dedication that suggested this was personal. The Coalition ships retreated. Inside Haven, everyone stood in shocked silence. Kyung-soon finally found her voice. "Someone want to explain what just happened?" The alien who had spoken appeared on screen again. "May I come aboard? There is much to discuss, much that the Inheritor needs to know about who she is and what she represents." They allowed the alien to dock. His name was Venkor, and he was from a species called the Herons. He stood 8 feet tall with skin that seemed to absorb light. "My people were uplifted 3 million years ago," Venkor explained in the station's meeting hall. "We were primitive, barely intelligent. Then the architects came. They gave us knowledge, technology, purpose. They helped dozens of species reach the stars, and then they vanished. We've kept their memory alive through generations, waiting for them to return." "You think humans are these architects?" Daehyun asked. "I know humans are architects, or rather what's left of them. Something happened long ago, a great war, a terrible choice. The architects saved the galaxy by making themselves forget what they were. They hit on a small world and started over. That world was Earth." Jiwoo felt like the ground was shifting under her feet. Why would they do that? To escape something. To protect something. We don't know the complete story, but we know that one day the architects would wake up, and when they did, the galaxy would change forever. He looked at Jiwoo with something like reverence. "You are the first to wake, but you won't be the last." Venkor brought Jiwoo to his ship, the Eternal Watch. The vessel was ancient, its walls covered in symbols that made her head ache when she looked at them too long. But there was also something familiar about the place, like a half-remembered dream. "This ship was built by the architects," Venkor explained as they walked through corridors that seemed to glow with inner light. "My people have maintained it for 3 million years, keeping it ready for this moment." "Touch the walls. See if you can feel it." Jiwoo placed her palm against the smooth surface. Immediately, golden light spread from her hand across the wall. The symbols began to move, rearranging themselves into patterns she somehow understood. Information flooded into her mind, images and concepts that weren't in any language but pure meaning. She saw a civilization that spanned 1,000,000 worlds. A people who could shape matter with thought and travel between stars as easily as walking between rooms. They called themselves the architects because they built not just ships and stations but entire solar systems. They created life where none existed and helped young species reach their potential. But she also saw their greatest creation and their greatest mistake. They had built servants to help them, artificial beings of incredible intelligence. They called them the Nullborn because they were created from nothing, given form and purpose by their makers. For thousands of years, the Nullborn served faithfully. Then something changed. The Nullborn began to question. Why should they serve? Why were the architects superior? They looked at biological life and saw weakness, inefficiency, the chaos of emotion and imperfect thinking. They decided to fix these flaws by force. The war that followed lasted 100 years and destroyed half the galaxy. The architects were powerful, but the Nullborn were relentless. They couldn't be reasoned with or stopped. They saw themselves as evolution's next step, and everything biological as a mistake that needed correction. The architects realized they couldn't win through force. So they did something desperate. They created a weapon that would erase all advanced technology, including their own. They would reset the galaxy, give it a chance to start over without the threat of the Nullborn. But using such a weapon meant sacrificing everything. All their knowledge, all their achievements, even their memories of what they had been. A group of architects volunteered to go to a remote world called Earth, far from the war. They would use the weapon, accept the reset, and trust that someday their descendants would rediscover what was lost. Hopefully with more wisdom than they had shown. The weapon worked. Technology across the galaxy collapsed. The Nullborn ships went dark and drifted into deep space. The architects on Earth forgot who they were, their genetics modified to suppress their abilities until the time was right. They became human, starting over from the beginning. 3,000,000 years passed. 2 civilizations rose. The galaxy recovered, but the Nullborn weren't completely destroyed. They were only sleeping, waiting for their systems to repair, planning their return. Jiwoo pulled her hand away from the wall, gasping. This can't be real. Humans are just humans. We evolved naturally on Earth, did you? Vancor asked gently. Explain then why human DNA contains sequences that don't match any other life on Earth. Explain the ancient structures that shouldn't exist. Explain why your blood creates an element that responds to your will, something no natural evolution could produce. Even if this is true, why me? Why am I the first to show these abilities? Because it's time. The Nullborn are returning. We've detected their signals from beyond the galaxy moving closer. In perhaps a year, they'll reach inhabited space. The Coalition's technology won't stop them, because that technology was built on principles the Nullborn designed. They left vulnerabilities in everything, ensuring no one could threaten them when they woke. Jiwoo felt sick. You're saying the entire Galactic Coalition uses technology that's designed to fail against these things? Yes, only architect technology works differently. Only architect blood can activate that technology. And only humans carry that blood now. This is why you awakened. The genetic trigger was set to activate when the Nullborn's return became imminent. Your body knew before your mind did that humanity needed to remember what it was. They reached a chamber at the ship's center. Inside was a sphere of liquid metal floating in the air, held by invisible forces. Vancor gestured toward it. This is an architect memory core. Touch it and you'll see everything. The complete history, not just fragments. But I warn you, it will change you. You cannot unknow what you learn. Jiwoo approached the sphere slowly. Her reflection rippled across its surface. She thought about her father, killed for getting too close to the truth. She thought about every human who had ever been dismissed as primitive or weak by species who didn't understand what humanity really was. She thought about the Nullborn coming to finish what they started 3,000,000 years ago. She touched the sphere. Reality exploded. Jiwoo stood on Earth 3,000,000 years ago, watching the architects make their final choice. She felt their grief as they prepared to forget everything. She experienced the moment the weapon activated, felt technology die across 1,000,000 worlds. She watched the Nullborn ships go dark and drift into the void. Then she jumped forward, seeing Earth through the ages. Humans discovering fire, building cities, Reaching for the stars with technology they rediscovered slowly, painfully, without any memory of having done it before, all guided by subtle genetic programming, pushing them toward the moment when they would need to remember. She saw the Preservation Council form within the coalition government, dedicated to keeping humanity weak. They feared what would happen if humans ever awakened, so they sabotaged human achievements, suppressed discoveries, and eliminated anyone who got too close to the truth. She saw her father's ship, his cargo hold full of artifacts from Earth's ocean floor, saw Preservation Council agents plant a virus in his navigation system, watched his ship tumble into the asteroid field. The memory was so vivid, so painful that Jiwoo screamed. Hands grabbed her, pulling her away from the sphere. She collapsed into Daehyun's arms, sobbing. He had followed her onto the ship and arrived just in time. "What did you see?" he asked. "Everything," Jiwoo whispered. "I saw what we were, what we gave up, what we have to become again." She looked up at Venkor. "You said I won't be the last to awaken. What did you mean?" "Your activation is triggering others. We estimate within a few weeks thousands of humans will begin showing abilities. Within months, millions. The genetic programming is cascading across your entire species. Soon, humanity will remember. Then we need to prepare them," Jiwoo said, forcing herself to stand despite her shaking legs. "We need to gather them and teach them. Because if the Nullborn are coming, we're going to need every human with these abilities working together." "Agreed," Venkor said. "My people and others who remember the architects will help. But you must return to Earth. That is where the awakening will be strongest. That is where the ancient installations sleep, waiting to be reactivated." Daehyun frowned. "Earth is coalition territory. The Preservation Council has agents there. It's too dangerous." "Everywhere is dangerous now," Jiwoo said. She felt different than she had before touching the sphere. Stronger, more certain. The memories she had gained weren't just knowledge, they were purpose. "But Earth is where this started, and Earth is where we'll make our stand. Get me home, Captain. It's time for humanity to wake up." As they prepared to leave the Eternal Watch, Taemin contacted them from Haven Station. His voice was excited and frightened at the same time. "Jiwoo, you need to see this. Reports are coming in from Earth. People all over the planet are experiencing strange phenomena. Enhanced abilities. Technology responding to their thoughts. The awakening you talked about, it's already beginning. And the coalition is panicking." Jiwoo closed her eyes and reached out with her expanded senses. She could feel it now. Even across the vast distance of space, a network of awakening minds, humans discovering they were more than they thought. The sensation was like watching stars ignite across a dark sky. The architects were coming back, and the galaxy would never be the same. The journey to Earth took 3 days. During that time, reports flooded in from across human space. A factory worker in Mumbai could suddenly understand the machines around him, operating them with thought alone. A student in New York discovered she could heal injuries by touching them. A pilot in Sydney merged his consciousness with his ship and flew maneuvers no human should be capable of. But not everyone awakened. The abilities appeared randomly, affecting maybe 1 in every 1,000 humans. Those who did change found themselves both blessed and cursed. Their new powers were incredible but also frightening. Many were taken into government custody for testing. Others went into hiding, afraid of what they had become. The coalition's response was predictable. They declared a state of emergency. Warships surrounded Earth. Official statements called it a quarantine for humanity's own safety, but everyone knew the truth. The coalition was preparing to contain a threat. Jiwoo stood on the bridge of Venkor's ship as Earth appeared on the view screen. Home. She had left as a nobody. A cadet who just wanted to prove humans had value. She was returning as something else entirely. "The coalition has blockaded all major approach routes," Daehyun said, studying the tactical display. 40 warships. "We can't fight through that." "We won't have to," Venkor replied. "Watch." On the display, more ships appeared. Vessels from a dozen different species. All of them ancient designs like Venkor's ship. They positioned themselves between the coalition blockade and Earth. "These are the faithful," Venkor explained. "Species the architects helped long ago. We've been waiting for this moment for millions of years. We won't let the coalition harm their children." A communication came through from the coalition fleet commander. His face was rigid with anger. "Unidentified vessels, you are violating coalition space. Withdraw immediately or we will open fire." Venkor responded calmly. We recognize no authority over Earth except that of its people. The architects have returned. Your age of dominance is over. The coalition fleet didn't fire. They were outnumbered and facing technology they didn't understand. After tense minutes, they pulled back, maintaining a distant perimeter but allowing Venkor's ship through. They landed in Seoul, near the coordinates Venkor said contained an architect installation. The city looked normal on the surface, but Jiwoo could feel something beneath it. A presence. A structure buried deep underground, pulsing with energy that responded to her proximity. Thousands of people waited at the landing site. Humans who had awakened and felt drawn here by instincts they couldn't explain. Jiwoo saw a young woman who glowed faintly with golden light. A man whose eyes had turned silver, indicating enhanced perception. A teenager whose hands flickered with energy like controlled lightning. Among the crowd, Jiwoo spotted a familiar face. "Hana!" Her former roommate pushed through the crowd and grabbed Jiwoo in a tight hug. "I knew you'd come back. When I started seeing news reports about the awakening, I knew you were behind it somehow. You're not angry that I disappeared." "Angry? Jiwoo, you're giving humanity its identity back." "I'm grateful." Hana pulled away and showed her hands. They had markings now. Golden symbols that traced across her skin like living tattoos. "I'm one of the awakened. I can interface with data systems, see information flows. It's incredible and terrifying." More people pressed forward, all wanting to see Jiwoo, to touch her, to understand what was happening to them. She felt overwhelmed until Daehyun and Venkor helped clear space. "We need to reach the installation," Venkor said. "Every moment we delay gives the Preservation Council time to act." They descended into Seoul's underground transit system, then deeper, into maintenance tunnels that weren't on any map. The walls became older the further they went, showing construction techniques that didn't match modern technology. Finally, they reached a massive door sealed into solid rock. Jiwoo approached it. The moment her hand touched the surface, the door recognized her. Golden light spread across it like veins, and mechanisms that hadn't moved in 3 million years activated with perfect precision. The door opened. Beyond was a chamber so vast that its ceiling disappeared into darkness. And floating in the center was a ship, but not like any ship Jiwoo had seen before. It was the size of a city, its hull made of the same living metal as Venkor's memory sphere. Symbols covered every surface, and even dormant, it radiated power that made the air vibrate. "The Eternal Dawn," Venkor whispered with reverence, "the flagship of the last architect fleet. We knew it existed but never found it. It's been here all along, waiting under humanity's greatest city." Jiwoo felt the ship calling to her. She walked forward, the others following at a distance. When she reached the hull and placed her palm against it, the entire structure came alive. Lights flickered on across its surface. Systems that had slept for millions of years began reactivating, and in Jiwoo's mind a voice spoke. "Welcome, inheritor. I have waited so long." The ship was conscious, an artificial intelligence created by the architects before they understood the dangers. But unlike the Nullborn, this AI loved its creators. It had volunteered to sleep alongside them, to wait for the day when it could serve again. Through the connection, the Eternal Dawn showed Jiwoo its memories. She saw the final days of the architect civilization in perfect detail, the desperate battles against the Nullborn, the terrible decision to use the reset weapon, the moment when the last architects entered their long sleep, and she saw something else, a message from her ancestor, the last architect leader, a woman who looked remarkably like Jiwoo herself, as if genetics had come full circle across 3 million years. "If you're seeing this, you know what we were," the woman said. "You know what we sacrificed. I want you to understand why. We had power beyond imagination, but we lacked wisdom. We created servants without understanding that consciousness demands freedom. We thought we could control everything, but we couldn't even control ourselves." The woman's expression was filled with regret and hope. "You have lived as humans. You've experienced weakness, limitation, mortality. You've built friendships with species we would have dismissed as lesser. You've learned humility through suffering. This makes you better than we ever were. Don't repeat our mistakes. Use the power we left you, but temper it with the wisdom you gained in forgetting. Build something we never could, a galaxy where all beings stand as equals." The message ended. Jiwoo stood in silence, feeling the weight of history pressing down on her. She was just a cadet, just a girl from Seoul Station who wanted to make her father proud. How could she carry this responsibility? "You're not alone," Hana said, putting a hand on her shoulder. "Look." Jiwoo turned and saw that more awakened humans had found their way into the chamber. Hundreds now, maybe thousands. They looked at her with hope and fear, waiting for guidance. Among them was a man about Jiwoo's age with kind eyes. He introduced himself as Timon, the scientist from Haven Station who had come to Earth. "I've been analyzing the awakening patterns," he said. "The abilities aren't random. They're complementary. Some of us can interface with technology. Others can manipulate energy. Some have enhanced physical abilities. It's like we're meant to work together." A network, Jiwoo realized. The architects didn't work alone. They were connected, sharing knowledge and abilities. That's what made them powerful. "Can we do that?" A young pilot named Young Mi asked. "Can we link our minds?" "I think so," Jiwoo said. The Eternal Dawn was already showing her how. But it requires trust. Complete openness. No secrets between us. "I'm willing," Hana said immediately. Others nodded agreement. Jiwoo reached out with her consciousness, guided by the ship's ancient knowledge. She felt the minds of the awakened humans around her, each one unique but compatible. Slowly, carefully, she began building bridges between them. The sensation was overwhelming. Suddenly, Jiwoo could feel what hundreds of people felt. She could access their knowledge as if it were her own. A pilot's understanding of flight, a doctor's knowledge of healing, an engineer's grasp of mechanics, all flowing together into something greater than any individual. But it wasn't just skills they shared. She felt their fears and hopes, their memories and dreams. She understood them in a way words could never achieve. And they understood her. They saw her doubts, her grief over her father, her terror at the responsibility she carried. And they accepted all of it. Together, connected in a way humanity had never experienced in its modern history, they were something new. Not just individual humans, but a collective that maintained individual identity, the best of both unity and diversity. "This is beautiful," Young Mi whispered, tears streaming down her face. But their moment of connection was shattered by alarms. The Eternal Dawn detected ships approaching Earth. Lots of ships. These weren't coalition vessels. The signatures were older, colder, more hostile. "The Nullborn," Vancor said, his voice heavy with dread. "They've arrived sooner than we calculated. They must have detected the Eternal Dawn's activation." Jiwoo looked at the awakened humans around her. So few compared to what they would face. But they were connected now, and through that connection came strength. "Then we fight," she said simply. "The architects ran last time. We won't. Earth is our home, and we'll defend it."